everybody, welcome back to Eggs. Today's special guest is Chris Carr. Chris, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not a problem.
Glad to have you here.
Can you, let's kick things off and just actually get a little quick background about you and how you got into what you do.
Sure. My name is Chris Carr. I started a digital marketing agency 22 years ago as of January. It's an agency called Faratech. We're located just outside the city of Philadelphia. And essentially what we are is we're a comprehensive digital marketing agency. And what we do is we focus on a comprehensive approach that basically builds systems for clients that generates leads, nurtures leads into clients, and then converts clients into raving fans of your brand, products, mission, values, you name it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 22 years. In the last 2 years, I've been a heavy adopter of AI technology to try to implement that into our marketing approaches as well. And so I'm kind of known for two things, the agency side really... and the AI side.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I mean, we've had a number of different marketers and stuff like that on the podcast over the years. And, we've talked inbound, we've talked outbound, we've talked, sort of traditional marketing. And even kind of recently, we've had people on the show and we ask, kind of what's next or where are we going or what are we doing? And a lot of the advice is still pretty traditional. They're not really getting into stuff like AI and things like that. So I think maybe that would be a good area to start our conversation. And
sure.
Do you mind talking a little bit about just sort of your approach or how you think the future of marketing might sort of shape up with AI? I think there's a interesting thing going on in society where people seem to be kind of afraid of AI, like it's out to get us. And so maybe if we could assuage some of those fears, but sort of see how we might work with our robot overlords in the future.
You're not kidding. Well, there's two different directions that I can go. The first one is obviously in the realm of ChatGPT and content writing and the impact on that. And then I also do something called programmatic advertising. With programmatic advertising, I use AI technology to look at all of your ads, to put it into a system, and it basically the best ad for the best audience at the best price wins.
Can we start with that? Actually, that actually kind of just really piqued my interest when you said that. And so and so programmatic advertising is deals with the open internet, as opposed to just, when we think of advertising, a lot of times we think of the things that are dealing with the Google network and Facebook and some of the traditional markets that we call walled gardens. And with walled gardens, as much as they are such a value to us and they really allow us to get the right message to those clients, what you don't understand is that so much, what most clients understand is that so much of the intelligence and the reach and the targeting is controlled by the overlords that run them. And what I mean by that is that Google and Facebook and these other companies, they want you to get that audience, but they also are sort of holding critical information back that's not going to let you do some of the things that you would be able to do in a programmatic environment. And so what you would think is, you're like, oh, wow, well, they own the lion's share of the internet. Well, the reality is that the advertising platforms that only own about 30% of the World Wide Web. It's 70% is dealing with the open internet, and that's where programmatic advertising lives. But it functions very different. And so a lot of times people will say, well, what's better? And I would say, well, what's better, a saw, a screwdriver, or a hammer? Because they're different tools for different purposes. And what programmatic advertising will do is it'll allow you to get very hyper personalized on your targeting. And so that's where it's really cool, because it'll use data assets that aren't even like from the traditional sources. So it's been scouring Dun & Bradstreet and all of these major big data warehouses to understand your targeting. And when it knows that targeting, it's able to really, really, really dive in and get to a spot where its footprint is very different. So let me give you a case study or an example. So I had a client and they did two things. One is they had traditional billboards, and the other things that they did is they put billboards in football, baseball, and soccer stadiums, right? And so what they do is they have a product that when you grab their product, it scours all of your social media and it sends you messages. Basically, it scours your social media and it says, these are the harmful posts that you posted over the last 20 years. You should clean these up because these harmful posts might bite you or your company in oncoming years.
if someone drives by that billboard, what programmatic advertising can do is it can say, hey, anybody who's gone past this billboard 2 times should get messaging on their phone or their mobile device that's identical to that billboard that's going to follow them around with classic retargeting.
Now, I've actually heard of this where, say, for example, you go into a restaurant and connect to their Wi-Fi. Now you're getting served ads based off of that. Yeah.
I don't even need their Wi-Fi anymore. The other scenario here is that the targeting is so good that it uses content AI, which basically looks at what is the content you viewed before you ever went into a building or something like that. And so when you go and you go into a stadium, if I'm in the cheap seats or just basically normal seating and I see the company's called Life Brand, when I see their ad, I would say to myself, hey, you know what? Maybe I should get Life Brand for me, the person. But the executives who are in the executive suites, when they leave, they get ads that say Life Brand would be great for your business.
So you can get that niche and actually determine if they're, ballers or if they're just Joe Schmo.
I know everything about everyone. The targeting is, I would say it's about 3 to 5 times stronger than the data that I get from social media advertising and traditional Google advertising. It's unbelievable.
Well, is this a proprietary thing that you built yourself, or is it something that's available?
No, I mean, they're widely known as DSPs.
Okay.
But the technology and the approach matters. Now, the other thing that you would say in this advertising thing is that before you used to do cost per click, a lot of these, specifically in the native space, will do what's called cost per engagement. So when they click on the ad, they have to stay on your website for 15 seconds for you to have to pay, as opposed to someone who clicks and then bounces.
I'm assuming that's more of a premium fee structure based off of that, though. Okay.
Yep. The reach, the reach allows you to. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. I know. Ryan,
no, you're good. You're totally fine.
Yeah. I can hit you on your phone. I can hit you interstitially. I can hit you on video, but I can also hit you in your podcasts. I can hit you on your connected TVs. I can hit you on radio. Anywhere that is digitally connected, those ads can follow you wherever you go.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. I remember I went to a conference on sort of like when retargeting was the big hot thing, right? And I remember them talking about, they were able to sort of make educated guesses about 10 or 15 steps ahead of you, just based on your search history and various things that you could sort of collect in a pre-AI world, right? So it was IP addresses and locations and things like this. And so it's interesting. I mean, that was maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And so it's interesting to see how far that has moved. And like, even in my own realm, like I had gone to a website. I can't remember what it was. I'm getting into watches. So it was something watch centric. And then I received an email from that company that was like, hey, we saw you were on our website. And I thought, wow, you were really able to put that together. And I'm guessing that is that programmatic, where it's scoured the internet sort of AI wise. I mean, my information is relatively public, so it's probably easy to start cross-referencing some things. And but they were literally able to drill it all the way down to a personal email address just from a web visit. I didn't click anything. I didn't buy anything. I didn't do anything. All I did was go to their website, read an article, and bounce.
Yeah. So I mean, I can nerd out to you and tell you how they got you.
Actually, could you do that?
5 different ways they got you.
How about you go down that rabbit hole? Because I'm interested.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the ways they would do it is that they would, when you looked at that thing, if you looked at it on your cell phone, it basically is it knows your IP address of your cell phone. And then when your IP address of your cell phone walks into a building, it basically knows to connect the record between the web search and the walking into the building search. And now it knows that you went into this premise. Now you can even do it so that when you go in the first time, you get ads that say, hey, welcome to ABC store, right? And then the second time you walk in, it was like, these are the 5 things you missed the first time you walked in. You can connect it with purchase history. You can connect it with everything.
It's funny, because really since sort of the advent of the Hey Googles and, Hey Siri type stuff. Sorry, my Siri's going to yell at me here in a second. But sort of since that stuff started happening, right, there's been these conspiracy theories, oh, my phone's listening to me. Oh, my device is listening. Maybe it is, but ultimately they deny it. But I think the point is that with programmatic or with this type of technology, I mean, you could almost fake it even if you didn't listen in. You could probably put together enough of a profile on an individual that you could probably make such educated guesses that it actually would feel like you were listening in.
Plus there's what you have is segmentation. And so what you're able to do is you're able to use 5 or 8 different data metrics that would all, when you add this data plus this data, it's going to narrow you down again and again and again. Certain habits of certain people, certain demographics in high income neighborhoods do different tactics and different techniques than people that in low income neighborhoods. Advertising to moms from 3 to 5, you know what they do? They sit in their kids' school waiting for them to get out of soccer practice. If you want to hit moms, you geo-target all the schools because they're pretty much sitting there in the parking lot on their phone, doom scrolling.
At 3 p.m. Every Monday through Friday, so you can pretty much geo-track exactly. Yeah, that's incredible. I've never actually put that together where they can actually target based on a location, and wow, that's...
And then you're molding. Now you have geo-targeting plus whatever it is. And then you could also say, hey, the average net worth of the kids that go to the school, not the kids, but the families that go to the school. If I have a luxury product, I'm going to identify those schools versus schools that might be from a lower income. And it goes on and on and on and on. I mean, I think advertisers, and Ryan, you would know, and this is a compliment to you. I find that advertisers are probably the smartest people in the marketing game, because what they're doing is that they're using rapid information. They're quantifying, they're understanding, what are all of these criteria? What are the characteristics and stuff like that? And how am I going to get the right message to the right client at the right time? Like SEO is like throwing paint against the wall. Some sticks, some doesn't. You write really great content. That's a select skill. But advertisers have to dream a little bit and say, hey, where are these people going to live? What are they going to say? What are they going to respond? What if this data mixed with this data equals this result? And, some of the people, if I sat in a room, I would go to the advertisers first because they always seem to be a step ahead of everyone else.
So let's talk a little bit about, let's kind of keep this programmatic train rolling and talk a little bit about sort of I guess your ideal customer, right? I mean, like, who is the person that could actually leverage this in their business?
Yep.
For me, if I may have a little bit of insight, but for your average person, they may go, God, that sounds great, but I mean, like, I can barely afford Google AdWords. Like, I mean, how can I afford something like programmatic? So are there, not necessarily restrictions, but I mean, like, is there a size of business that this is more tailored for? Is there an entry level budget that makes the most sense?
I would say no. I would say that, you're talking about a little bit medium, well, not small. Like I would say really small brands, no, but I think you're probably looking at $8,000 minimum per month would probably move the needle. But what you start to do is you start to figure out, not only am I going to do programmatic advertising, am I going to do native advertising, which means I'm going to plant an article on someone's website that looks like it was my article. So when you go to Forbes, you think you're reading a Forbes article, but you're not. You're reading an article I wrote and curated to fit in Forbes. So that's native advertising. That costs a lot. Then you want to do display in the same through programmatic advertising. Then you want to do, I'm missing one, but all of a sudden, all of these approaches just start adding up and adding up and adding up between your startup fees, your artwork, and all that things like that. It's not for the faint of heart. Like, these are for the people that are really want to know that they're going to win through advertising.
Well, I really appreciate you kind of calling out a number. A lot of people give kind of and I understand that's a broad number, right? I mean, you can basically spend as much as you want, but I think it's important to point that out because there's so many people who get into social media, and they have their 14-year-old run Twitter for them, and they, and then they're upset because, man, we put all this time into Twitter and we don't get anything, no ROI on this thing. Yep. And, that happens a lot. People advertise, through various channels, whether it's social media, not to single them out, or, pay-per-click or, billboards even for that matter.
Yep.
But I mean, people put money into these things all the times. And if they don't see the needle move, then they abandon and just don't do anything, right? Or they don't give it time to start working. But it sounds like with programmatic, because of if you do a good job, I guess, identifying your customers and knowing who you're trying to speak to, then you could probably start moving that needle relatively quickly.
Yeah, you can. I mean, when I would start, if I had to start out with a brand new company, I would probably do, depending on every client's different, every goals are different, but let me just give the Garvin variety. I would probably start out with traditional Google advertising at first. Then once you have some really good assets and you have to nurture those leads, that's where I really find it's great for brand awareness and it's great for nurturing. It's not always great for transactional. Hey, they clicked on this ad and they bought now. It's programmatic kind of helps join the other ads together. It's like the connective tissue between other advertising approaches.
Yeah. Well, and I read a thing today, that might be a nice little addition to this programmatic advertising, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because we actually don't sell programmatic at our place. Yep. So I don't know all the ins and outs, but I read today that Amazon is pushing their one-click purchase thing out for other e-commerce platforms now.
Yeah.
So basically, even if you don't have an Amazon store or your products aren't on Amazon, now they can do fulfillment and things for you. So you can do the one click. So theoretically, you could do programmatic, and in as simply as just clicking the ad, you could have made your purchase, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some things I just love about Amazon, the speed of transaction. The part I hate about Amazon is that they own your audience, that you don't get much information about them. And so like one of the things that we don't even realize that we did in COVID is that we worked super hard to keep our businesses alive. And in that process, we made Amazon, and I use the joke of the overlords were the real winner because they have all the data, and data is more expensive than gold.
Right. And of course, now they're selling it all back to everybody. So
is there a way through the programmatic approach that can kind of counteract that, where you can keep the data in-house and not necessarily, is there a way to kind of work synergistically with someone like that and still retain the data?
No matter how hard you try, you want to always get the email address. You also know that the email address decays by about 3% month over month. So, but what I'm always trying to do is I'm trying to get the name and the email address. And then we use technologies like Seamless or other things like that to double verify the email address. But that's going to be the goal, that you want to make sure that, I think a lot of people grade their marketing on how much money did I make? Well, subscribers have to be a critical part of this process. It's like Google couldn't dethrone Facebook because Facebook actually had the people.
Mm-hmm.
They were already invested. They were already pregnant. It was just really hard for them to say, oh, leave Facebook and come here. And so one of the things that you don't want to do is you don't want to wake up one day, know that you've worked so hard in marketing, and you look at your database, or basically your email list, and it's 1,000 people. You made great transactions, you made great income, but it'll never compound.
Yeah.
That's why I like Neil Patel. I'm just real quick. That's why Neil Patel's like, I got this idea that I did it and I made, $11 million on $5,000 worth of advertising. And I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. But you also have an email list of 3.8 million people. Mm-hmm. Like I could sell ketchup to a woman wearing white gloves if I had 3 million people.
Yeah, there's bound to be some people wearing white gloves in an audience that size.
That product that we were talking about beforehand, I'm not going to drop the name in this conversation, but that product and that person that we were discussing, yep. I think a lot of it, the notoriety and the ability to get the word out based off of the initial launch campaign came to his success on TV and his success on his Instagram account, and that I think was the initial driver to the product and the success that he had. So
he found me on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you touched on email marketing, and I think programmatic, especially programmatic plus AI, sounds like the future of marketing or future of advertising. But what about older tools like that, like email? You mentioned the importance of having your list, and I think that's pretty commonly espoused, the concept that you should own your audience. But what role does email marketing play? I mean, if we are choosing our channels, or if maybe we have a limited budget and we can't go full hog on programmatic, is there still play in email?
Absolutely. So here's one of the things that this is a little bit of a flex, but I wrote when I became a Forbes contributor. And when I did that, I wrote my first article called "Building Your House on Sand." And the concept of that article was, you can invest all your money and time and energy into SEO, and they could do an algorithm change and it's gone. Mm-hmm. We have tons of stories that people went all in on Facebook, and then Facebook did an algorithm change and it's gone. All these things are controlled by, I've said the joke 3 times, but the overlords that control it, they set up all the rules. There's no algorithm theoretically with email. I mean, you don't want to get caught in spam boxes, but you own the list, and so you actually get to own it. And so that is a luxury that you should always just try to prize and respect. And like we just said, we want to own that. But I think one of the critical things about email is that a lot of people email wrong. And what I mean by that is that they have their entire list and then they just whack their entire list. The great companies take their list and they do as much segmentation as possible. And then they get strategic messaging they'll send 5 emails to select groups rather than 1 email to the whole damn list.
And by doing that, how can you use just the email address to differentiate who's in what category?
Well, I mean, a lot of times we'll use technology that we'll get their email address, and then the email address will get the company and the title from technologies like Seamless or something like that can reverse engineer and kind of figure out where they live. And then what I try to do is I try to find out, hey, how many verticals am I actually serving? Or how can I group or lump these people in together so that when I'm emailing and I'm doing it for manufacturers, my messaging is very, very different than when I do for orthopedics clients.
Huh.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, I guess that's the sort of the programmatic version of email, and it's probably a little bit more clunky. It's not as streamlined or as slick as using these new AI processes. Although I have to imagine email is improving too.
Oh, I got a story about how AI is like this should. Yeah, are you allowed to curse on the show?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
We try not to for your benefit. Yeah, no, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. So I've got a buddy of mine, and he's using the technology here, and this is like in beta. And the guy's literally using ChatGPT or just GPT. Sorry, not ChatGPT, GPT. And the GPT basically will go into your HubSpot, and it'll look at all the records in HubSpot, and then from HubSpot, it'll find the guy's name, their email address, and their social handles. And through GPT, it'll say, hey, Mike, it's been 30 days since we talked. I loved the article that you posted on LinkedIn about the 5 ways that that audio is killing podcasts. Also thought it was really cool that you formed your company 13 years ago. Wanted to keep my name in front of you. Think you're the best. We should schedule a time to grab some lunch. And it will know 3 different things. 1, that you're local to me. 2, it'll know what you posted on your social media. And 3, it's going to email you and send you that article, and you didn't do anything.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I mean, I've only played with the Chat GPT side, but I've played with it enough just to kind of dabble. And I was actually using it to just like brainstorm some like strategic thought around a company that I'm advising. And, the idea was, okay, hey, we're speaking to this audience. We want to tell them something that's sort of, intriguing or will pique their interest. What are their problems? What are their needs? And, I mean, I guess if you fully trust the GPT, then it came back with a great, it came back with a nice spiel, right? That feels pretty good. I mean, I guess you'd have to try it and vet it and see if it actually works. But I mean, it was pretty darn remarkable what it could come back with. And, I've used Midjourney and some of the other AI tools for imagery, but this was my first attempt at something outside of some AI integrations in different social media publishing platforms, for example. Some of these guys are starting to integrate AI, so that you can send out automated messaging or whatever. But I found in almost all of them, the messaging is almost not usable. Like it's pretty bad. And so, but this Chat GPT is pretty slick.
It's pretty slick, and to be able to stay contextual and hone, I think is really cool. I mean, I'll say 2 things, and I want to make sure that I'm afraid that you and I are the 3 of us were going to progress in the conversation. And I'm going to miss some of these critical things, and I think that this has to be known. The first thing is that in 1903, the Wright brothers flew the plane 10 feet off the ground for about 100 yards. Totally innovative. Blew all the competition away. In 1969, we landed on the moon. So in only 66 years, that's a big jump in 66 years. We're doing this AI stuff is coming, but it's not coming in years. It's coming in weeks and months. Okay. Cause you have ChatGPT 4, you have GPT-4 coming out. Google has Palm. I don't know how they pronounce it, but it's spelled PALM. They're going to have their AI. All that stuff is it's all coming out so rapid fire. And so the speed of technology is crazy. And so when I think of ChatGPT, I'm like, it doesn't do everything I want and everything I hoped, but I'm telling you, this is what AI looks like when you're flying at 10 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
where it's going is going to knock your freaking socks off.
Yeah, and it's funny because we had a conversation. We had a guy on the podcast a couple of weeks ago that runs an AI company that basically builds an AI presence of you based on all your content that you've put out on the internet, and build sort of a virtual you that people can talk to. And we brought this up because at the moment there was a news story about people using ChatGPT to write college essays and stuff like that. And my wife teaches in a junior high here in Utah, and it's so we were just having a conversation about, is this technology going to screw it up for everybody? And, and it's funny. And so we brought it up with this guy, and he, obviously a pioneer in AI. And he's like, no. He's like, the thing is, we'll build an AI on top of that AI that can tell that it was AI. Like, he's like, it'll just get better. It'll layer and layer and layer. And eventually you'll have AIs that can read the AI and recognize that it's AI so that you don't have to worry about it. So
we're already there in the aspect of, and brings me to my second point, is that my fear of this AI phase that we're in right now is the over adoption and overreaction to what it really is. So it should be a tool that assists you, but it shouldn't be a tool that replaces what you do. So what I'm seeing is a ton of people that are jumping out, going into the content marketing game, writing tons of stuff for their website. But OpenAI, you can even check out their website. They literally have a watermark technology so that Google and others will know that this content is written with AI. So that's step number one, is that if this is an imminent threat to Google, all of a sudden they could just be like, hey, anything that was AI generated doesn't index. Yeah. So you could literally be building your house on sand. It's the same algorithm problem we had before.
So I've been getting into software over the last few years, and I just went through a coding boot camp, and a lot of the hype right now is that what are they going to need us for? Like what's the relevance of someone who's manually typing the code out? And I've tried it. I've gone to ChatGPT and I've said I need a model structure for this, and I need it to be in this language, and it just spits it out. But I honestly think that it's not going to be like what I think will end up happening in the long run is it will replace a lot of us, but it won't replace all of us because someone still has to sit behind the computer and tell it what you need. So I think there's still relevance. I think there's still a place for people in the equation, but I think it is going to be, if anything, it's just going to be the encyclopedia back in the day was revolutionary. Google was revolutionary. All these things are revolutionary, and they're just tools to get to the end point, and it'll just help you do it a little bit easier, and the average person can leverage it more versus going to a big software firm and needing all their help. You know what I mean? You see what I'm getting at?
I mean, I think it's who's controlling the tool. So like when the abacus was there and then the calculator came out, nobody said, "Oh my gosh, accounting's dead. Why do you need a CPA?"
Yeah.
Right. And I know that's a little facetious, but I also think, and you guys know, when the client hires you, and let's say hypothetically you bill out at $150 an hour, right? It's only maybe $5,000 to $8,000 before you're at 40, like basically 40 hours. I'm trying to do the math real quick, but essentially my point is that when you work for a client, you're probably only doing about 20% of what you're capable of doing because their budget ran out. That's what it is in the service industry. Now, what's going to happen now is that we're going to be able to say, hey, foundational content for the most part is taken care of. Now, what's all the creative stuff that we can do on top? What is your act two, where you're going to bring as much value as possible in an ever-changing landscape? And the companies that don't have act two, they're in trouble. But the companies that do have an act two, and they're always dreaming about how do I use that tool to make even more creative value, those are the companies that are going to crush it. And they're going to use those tools as an asset, not a replacement.
Yeah. To that point, that was part of what my discussion with my wife was, right after we talked to this AI expert, was that even though, people, yes, they'll be able to use an AI to generate some copy or whatever they want. Like, so much of it still depends on the individual being able to ask the right questions, being able to do all that stuff, right? So if the argument is kids are never going to have to learn how to write essays because now they can just fake essays, it's like, well, no, they still have to have the foundational knowledge and the even foundational like grammar knowledge to be able to take that thing that the AI spit out and make sure that it's grammatically accurate. And there's still a lot of skills that you're going to have to correct that stuff. And for people that have used Midjourney or similar AI platforms for graphics, I mean, it's like speaking in code to get it to actually generate what you want it to generate, right? Yeah. So it still requires kind of creative thinking and all the things that it would take to create that asset yourself, but now you're just using a different tool. So I think that, to your point about a second act, or people being able to do that. I mean, yes, one thing is this technology is coming around, but the people who can truly master it and use it to their own success and the success of their clients are going to be the ones that stand out.
Yep. My fear though, is the clients are going to be like, hey, I don't need you to, you can't charge me that price for a blog. You could spin it up in 15 seconds. I'm like, no, I can't. No, I can't.
Well, and there's also sort of the aspect of core knowledge, right? I mean, yes, even if you could do it in 15 minutes, well, I can do it in 15 minutes because I've been doing it for 20 years. You go ahead and try. And if you want to, take a shot at doing it yourself, you can. I mean, the reason you bring on an expert is because of their expertise. It's not because of their ability to use a tool, for example. I think that's one of those sort of common things. And it is for sure what a customer would push back with, right? It's like, why am I paying you so much? I could do this myself. Okay, go do it yourself, and then call me back when you need me to come back on. And so at least that's how it always worked out for me.
You ever seen the adage where the guy, I'm going to butcher it, but let's just pretend like it was a boat. And so what happens, they have this boat, they got to get it into the water, and they can't figure it out. So they call this expert. The expert comes in, he's got overalls on or whatever it was, and he just goes over to the part of the boat, and he just, in 2 whacks of tool, he basically fixes the boat in 10 minutes, right? And then all of a sudden they give an invoice, and he gives an invoice for $20,000. And the guy's like, $20,000? I've been here for 2 minutes. And he goes, no, the $20 was for like basically using my hammer and tapping it to make sure that it was right. The other $18,000 or whatever that was, my math's already off, but let's pretend it was 18. The other $18,000 was the 25 years it took me to know the exact spot where to hit.
Yeah.
So all of the tribal knowledge, all all of that stuff, I wasn't born overnight. I was born out of 10,000 hours of doing it wrong to figure out how to do it right so that you get to win in 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, I think that is sort of, the way of the world, actually. And I think for people who are afraid of AI and advancing tools, it's no different than the guy that used to shoe horses, getting all bummed out when the Model T rolled off. I mean, like, change does happen and people are afraid of change. But if you think about it more as like a layering on instead of a direct replacement, for example. So, now you're not shoeing horses, but the skills you learned, working metal, now you can build fenders for the.
Well, Ryan, right. In that same analogy, right? Horses didn't go anywhere. There's still horses that need to be shoed, but there's less people that know how to do it. And if you still have that knowledge and that ability to do it, now you're a commodity. Now you're in the minority, and people have to look you up and find you to be able to do that.
That's true. I mean, anybody who's trying to build a house or needs to have a plumber over or needs an electrician or something right now is really experiencing this. Where the people who are really skillful and, masters of their trade, they're hard to find right now. And, if you need those kind of people, they're just not, they don't exist. Everybody went into tech and political science and all that kind of stuff. And you're left with very few real technicians. I mean, I've always told my boys, like, if they felt like they didn't want to go to college, I was like, you know what, just go apprentice at a plumber's shop and figure that out, because you make $1 million being the best plumber in town.
Yeah. Well, and it goes one step further too. So let's just pretend like we're going to look at the way content is developed in the traditional sense. And so if you looked at a buyer's journey, right, if you broke it down into 3 categories: awareness level content, consideration level content, and awareness, consideration, and decision level content, right? If I'm going to buy a car, in the awareness stage, I'm like, hey, I bought a car, my car broke down, or I want something cool. So in the awareness stage, hey, I need some general information on what are the cool cars that are out there. Then in the consideration stage, then I'm trying to hone it in. Do I want an SUV, a sedan, or whatever that is? And then in the decision level stage, I'm going to figure out the dealership, make, model, color, all the other details. The ChatGPT is going to really take a bite out of the awareness level content. But consideration and decision level content, that deals with your company, your brand, your voice, your unique selling proposition. And no matter how hard ChatGPT does, in the ideal sense, they can scour everything you ever written and sound like you and your voice. But right now, it cannot do that.
Yeah.
It can't do consideration. It can't do decision level content because it just doesn't know me versus you. I mean, I do some advertising. Ryan does some advertising, but I don't even know what you do differently than me, Ryan. I don't.
Right.
And ChatGPT won't either.
Yeah. Well, and actually that was one of the things when I was playing with ChatGPT or GPT, I was asking it questions because I was trying to basically write an essay to show my wife how this thing would work, right? So I was like, okay, well, I was asking it about Macbeth and, what are the themes that exist in the story? And it put together this nice long thing, but like I needed references. I needed it to quote some things. I needed it to do all this stuff. And even though it has access to the world's information, it didn't have like that granular little bit that we're writing this particular style of essay and we need to include data from these different places. And, I think it could probably do it with more fine tuning and honing and stuff like that. But I found that it didn't seem to call out that much. It rather took this collective knowledge and gave you a response from its knowledge. And I don't know if that's a generation or the type of questions I was asking, but it seemed like it wasn't fully formed yet.
I think that the next generation will allow you to import the critical information and how you want to say it. And so we were talking about, Mike was talking about specialists that they have coders now, but what will the specialists look like in a year or 10 years, whatever, 5 years, whatever it is? It's going to be the people that know how to feed the beast the most efficiently and the best and fastest. So if this thing is like a vacuum and just basically sucks all this stuff in, spits it out, it's going to be the people that know how to feed the beast the most effectively so that when it does an output through AI, it basically can read through the clutter and do all that stuff. And so eventually they're going to get to a spot where they were going to be able to read very quickly everything I've ever written, said, and done, and then speak in my voice.
That's actually the guy that we interviewed two weeks ago. Yep. That's his whole concept is by feeding it with your content and your voice, it actually hones it down to be more precise and to sound more like you and your style per se versus a general, just tell me about Macbeth. It would tell Ryan would go into that website and say, tell me a thing about Macbeth, but it would come out sounding like Ryan.
Yeah.
Which is pretty unique.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I actually had a long talk with them after about how we can, leverage this tool, on our podcast or in other places. And this idea of a knowledge base and part of what really piqued my interest with this guy that came on, I wish he has a Indian name, and so it's really hard to say. Otherwise, I'd just say his name. So, but the company is Personal AI. I just don't want to screw it up without a note in front of me. But the company is called Personal AI, and basically what they do is we have a friend that's a guest of the show or has been on the show. This guy Chris Doe, and he's really interested in building a AI persona of himself that people can use to ask questions of his consulting practice. Right? I mean, a lot of his audience can't really afford to hire him, and so but they email him the same 50 questions, 100 times a day. Exactly. And so he's trying to build this platform for doing that. And I don't know what platform or software he's using, but Personal AI will do something like that. But what it does is it sort of constrains your knowledge base to your knowledge base. So instead of like scouring the world for data, it rather will look at every YouTube video you've produced and every article you've written and every website you've written and, whatever else, and take your amalgamation of knowledge and then in your voice basically respond to these questions. And so I think it's really interesting, the implications, but it seems for anybody who's like afraid of AI, it's like we really need to look at it more as like our friend or like our compatriot in whatever it is we're trying to do, because it's going to facilitate, ease of doing so many different things that it's better to just kind of work with it than be afraid of it.
Yeah. We were saying like, if it's either get out in front of it or you're going to get rolled over by it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's,
you can bury your head in the sand, but it's going to be here whether you like it or not. I mean, like, I don't want the metaverse at all. Like, I watched a ton of stuff on what Mark was trying to sell. Mark, like, I know him, call him Mark.
Right.
Zuckerberg's guy, freaking guy. Anyhow, I don't want that world, but it's coming whether I like it or not. I mean, my kids are going to be best friends with kids in China that look like elephants and all these other crazy avatars. That world's bizarre to me, but it's coming. I'm not going to be able to stop it.
So actually, I want to go down that rabbit hole. You as someone who's in the advertising world, I've actually had a discussion with the person in advertising at a radio station, and we've actually discussed this, the metaverse and how would that affect future ad campaigns? I mean, are you taking that into consideration as a place to actually advertise?
Once it reached critical mass, if it has the adoption levels that it should, I mean, I listen to a lot of Scott Galloway, and I actually believe that the metaverse.
I like Scott too. He's great. Yeah.
Like he believes that the metaverse is actually going to be AirPods.
Really?
You know? Yeah. And that you're going to be able to get custom information very specific to your likes and stuff like that. And it's just going to be mostly in your ears. Because I think a lot of people just believe that, oh, the metaverse is here, but you got to wear this console. And if you just know anything about the dynamics of the way you're built, the screen has to be a certain distance from your thing. It's not they're going to be able to put contact lenses with this stuff on because they can't power them. And so no one wants to wear this clunky thing. Like it's fun to go into an Oculus and pick off a cat off the top of a building without wondering whether you're going to get whatever, you know, like Matt, choose your adventure in the Oculus world. But you do want to take them off. You don't want to live there. But when we can get the metaverse in our ears, right, we'll live in that world. And so I think that the first jump is going to be AR, and then it's going to be whatever this metaverse is that he's talking about. The technology is not. Yeah.
I mean, even talking about just the programmatic advertising we were talking about, I mean, if you could be walking past my virtual storefront and get pinged in the ear, you know, hey man, I noticed you were nearby. Why don't you come in, hang out, or whatever. I mean, because I think that, there's a lot of different versions of what the metaverse might be. That's the first I've heard of it being in your ears, which is really interesting. And I think what people go to is the VR goggles or whatever. And I played around a little bit with Decentraland. And it was like sort of right in the middle of a land grab, right? So everybody's buying up their property and all that stuff so that you've got this. And in my mind, it's like, okay, well, somebody's going to have to adopt this as the platform for that land to matter. And so, because I was like, maybe I want just one little brick in there so that I can just, have a virtual storefront one day if this is where it ends up. But, but I'm not sure that that's going to be what it is. I think there's going to always be sort of some need for real life interaction. Getting out, moving around and stuff. I mean, there's versions, like if you go full like Ready Player One, where people just, the world's gotten so bad that we just do it all inside now. But I prefer to be a little more optimistic and hope that's not where we're ending up.
Yeah,
I know. Can you go ahead? Oh, I was going to say, you first.
I wrote an article for VentureBeat and just talked about the morality the advertisers should have looking into this world, that if they succeed on the metaverse and they can make the virtual world more realistic or as transparent as the world we're in, right? It's like this whole like Garden of Eden thing. Like you don't want every desire you have. You think you do, but I promise you don't. And so like, if you can't get your kids off of Fortnite, what do you think it's going to be like in the metaverse? And then when you're going to look is you're going to marry that with AI, and AI is going to displace a crap ton of jobs. And then you're in a scenario where you got a vast majority of our country or the world that's radically unemployable, that has access to another world that they can just plug into and live there. It's going to be this very weird world that really technology that's trying to improve life is going to take jobs away to make life devoid of purpose. So you're going to find purpose in a fake life. So, I hope I didn't get weird on you here, but that's literally what I was trying to say. I'm like, all these two things are like a collision course that it's just like, holy crap.
Well, and I think that's the threat, right? And I think it's also the same kind of concern that people have had with other technologies along the way, right? Yep. I remember somebody saying that there was a belief early on when they first created the locomotive that if the human body moved more than like 30 miles an hour, we'd just go like full liquid. Like, I mean, just like we would just fall apart if we went faster than that. Yeah. And so there were a lot of people worried about the railroad when they first started building that out because they were afraid, they'd get on the train and then just die, vaporize. And, which is crazy when you think about it now in retrospect. But I mean, these are the kinds of beliefs people have, right? So I think there is a version of society and a class of people who will get lost in the metaverse, and that'll be where they live, and it'll be very unfortunate, and that'll just be sort of their life. And, I mean, to your point about getting kids off, Fortnite or anything else, I mean, God, I can barely pull the controller out of my kids' hands with those things. And so that's not even being fueled by AI or anything else yet. I mean, just imagine when it's fully immersive. And, so, I mean, I think that the concern is real. And I like to give humans the benefit of the doubt that they will actually, realize that this isn't actually that good for them. But I think it will take some, eggs being broken to get there. Sort of like what you saw with social media or any of the rise of any of these other technologies.
But here's the deal. I'm going to blow the the details of the story out, but the premise is still the same. When they realized that they did all the studies, I think it was by Ford, that basically realized that seatbelt saved lives. I forget what his name, McNamara, the guy was the Secretary of Defense for Kennedy, stuff like that, Vietnam. Basically, before that, he worked for Ford, and he proved that seatbelts save lives. But seatbelts are inconvenient to wear. And so it took 30 years for the regulators, the politicians, to basically make seatbelts mandatory. They had data for 30 years. The problem is if the AI and the technology moves so fast, oftentimes we look at politicians or whatever it is to be the saviors of the moral police to figure out what to do. I think that the technology is moving so fast. And if you haven't noticed, every politician has gray hair and is over the age of 55.
I was just going to say that. I'm like, there's no way Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders knows anything about AI and the effects of what it's the long-term effects. We don't even know what the long-term effects of, anything are that's currently coming out. I mean, Facebook, TikTok, all these crazy things that have come out in the last 10 years. Yeah. We don't even have any data to associate it to. So how is an 80-year-old person who hasn't been on a computer in 40 years going to know anything about it? And that's super infuriating to me.
It's bizarre. But even if, let's pretend like I could just put it in the hands of 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds, or 40-year-olds, right? That were smart enough to do it. The technology curve is so high. It's just by the time you could even write a manual on saying, hey, this is the implications, get it peer reviewed and stuff like that. ChatGPT 4 comes out, then ChatGPT 5 comes out. Yeah. It's like the speed of innovation is 5 times faster than the litigation. I mean,
well, and this is actually one of the problems with like traditional education right now too, like going through university programs and stuff. I actually prefer the way that like Mike went through this tech boot camp or this coding boot camp, but at least you get sort of current what's happening now kind of information, and it's done in 12 weeks and then you're on your way, right? Versus a model where you go to a 4-year career. And I mean, just take ChatGPT as an example. Where was it if I started my bachelor's 4 years ago to where it is today? How could I have taken an education on how to write AI? Like, it wouldn't happen, right?
Well, and I would even go as far as to say is like the boot camp that I went to 4 months ago. Yeah, they were on the cutting edge, but ChatGPT wasn't even out at that point. Now you could almost have a full-on boot camp on how to effectively use ChatGPT to deploy code or to manage your server or to whatever it is that you're trying to do. There's probably boot camps that are spinning up right now specifically for that cause. And if you haven't done it, I take the trademark on that and send your royalties my way here.
Talk to ChatGPT today about spinning up a course on ChatGPT.
I speak at colleges all the time because that's where I get our interns from, and I hire a lot of interns to work here. And the thing is, for me, is I try to use a little bit of the Steve Jobs speech and just say, look, hey, you know what? You got to love what you do. And so while the technology and all the stuff will change, if you love marketing, I have a home for you here at Faratech. You know what I mean? If you're the guy who's just looking to get by, not so much. And so I guess where college will have it sort of its place is use the technology at the time to develop an appreciation, a love, and adoration for your craft. And then when you get in the real world, try to figure out how your craft can actually work.
Yeah, I might just add to that too, because I mean, we don't normally make a practice of totally crapping on the education system, but even though neither Mike or I are giant fans, but we don't we don't generally discount it. We just sort of attribute it to whoever's, if it's your path, it's your path. But the one thing I will say that we've learned, and I bring this up all the time, is in 300 interviews on this show, what we've learned about people is that basically everything is a layering of knowledge. Right. And there's basically no wrong steps along the way. Everything contributes to your foundational core, whatever that is. Right. So like you're saying, use college to decide that you like marketing and that sort of thing. And I think that's right. And it will also be all the life experiences up to that point and all the life experiences afterwards that will sort of inform who you are and what you care about and all those things. And so I don't think that any path is wrong necessarily. Right. So I think that, whether you go traditional education or you decide to do it on your own, especially in a tech realm, it's very possible to do things on your own these days. I still think there's no shortcut around this layering of stuff, right? I don't think you're going to get it all from college. I don't think you're going to get it all from a friend. I don't think, it takes sort of the amalgamation of everything to get there.
Yeah. I mean, if you learn to learn or you learn to love to learn, I think that's one of the big things. The hardest thing for me is to justify a college like Bucknell University charging $80,000 a year. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, if the only outcome we're going to get from some parts of college are to learn to learn or learn to love to learn, $80,000 a year is a pretty expensive cost.
Well, and what's that movie that you like dumb apples or whatever? It's what?
Yeah,
How about
Good Will Hunting.
Good Will Hunting. There's a quote in there where he's like, you spend $120,000 on your education that I can get from a couple late fees from the public library. And that's 100% it. It's like, if you have the desire to get out and actually study and focus on yourself, you don't need the education. You can get it yourself. It's all out there. You want to go and get a college education, there's full programs where you can do that for free. You just got to go and do the work.
This sounds crazy, but I don't read very much, and please don't hear that in a very way. I'm saying I read books. And so what I do is I find an interest in a book, and then I go on YouTube and I watch all the interviews of the author of that book.
Yeah.
And to promote the book, he tells me the best parts of the book. And after I've watched 3 or 4 videos of the author saying the good parts, if am I still interested, then I'll read the book.
Yeah. And I don't read. I'll be on a trip for 12 hours and I'll put an audiobook on, but it'll be an audiobook of something I'm interested in, not necessarily just a fiction or something to keep me busy. It's something that I have a desire to learn, and that's
and that's where it's going to be bizarre, because let's pretend like we start to live. I don't want to even get into we're going to implant technology in our skin, but I do believe that's going to be happening so easily. But let's pretend like this metaverse is in our ear. Like, you're going to be driving and just be like, hey, tell me 5 things about Abraham Lincoln I don't know. And all of a sudden your ear's just going to be playing and you're going to be learning at the speed. It's just going to be a faster hose.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that, because every time I ask Siri for anything, she's like, what do you want? I'm busy.
I'm so incredibly unimpressed with Siri and Alexa. I really am. Like, for as brilliant as they are, they're also like, that's the best you could do. When ChatGPT comes out, I'm like, it's leagues beyond these giants that we're building these other technologies.
Yeah.
There should be like certain intuitive things that are just crazy, and I look at some of these companies that are so big, and I'm always surprised at some of the subtle things that they miss. And I'm just like, it's just bizarre. Like my iPhone, I got the iPhone 14 and I returned it 3 months later, and they're like, well, why would you return it? I was like, because it's no better than the 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, and it's funny, like the one I always call out is Apple Maps. And I'm Apple fanboy, I have the Macs, the iPhones, the Apple Watches, everything, right? I buy all their crap. And Apple Maps to me was half baked when they rolled it out, and it still gets crap wrong all these years later. And it's like, and Google Maps works perfect every time. So it's like, okay, so you're literally the most valuable company on the planet. Like, scoop up Google then. Like, do something. Like, just get me the best maps, because I love their interface. I love all their stuff, but the tool is not reliable. And so it's funny, because it's just, to your point, they got more money than God, but they can't fix the little problems. And that's the issue with, these self-help bots, the Siris and the Googles and all that. Yep. And so listening, I still love her.
It's 1:30, but I want to make sure I get this one story out because it relates back to Apple Maps. So when we do this thing, we develop comprehensive systems for marketing. And what we do is that we talk to clients, and what they'll do is they'll say, we need more traffic to our website. And I'm like, what happens if you win? And like, what do you mean what happens if I win? We get more clients. I'm like, well, let's pretend like I got a bucket and the bucket has holes in it, right? And then what happens here is I pour more and more water into the bucket and it drains out the bottom. What you keep doing as a customer is saying, the answer to my problems is more water. I'm like, no, it's not, dude. I'm like, I need to plug the holes in the bucket. I want to get your story just right. I want to get it when they come to your website, they get immediate value. They know exactly what you do. How many websites do you go to and you don't even know what they do? I want to be able to get all of these foundational things rock solid so that when I do put water in, it actually sticks and it stays. Because the answer to the problem is not more traffic and it's not more water. The answer to your question is like, what do I get? Like, it costs a lot of money to bring traffic. Why don't I retain the ones that I have? Because here's the deal. In certain markets, you only get one bite of the apple. No pun intended here, because I am going to circle back to that. Apple Maps could be freaking incredible right now. I don't go back to it because they had my attention and they lost it. They did a crappy rollout. and I don't trust them. Well, our companies that would come to me are already doing that. They're like, bring me traffic. I was like, with your messaging, I can bring you traffic. I don't know whether I can bring them back. Because when they got there the first time, they're so disappointed. Why would they come back? You know what I mean? And this is what happens all the time. You know, I mean, like Apple, the king of the world, and you, Joe, the plumber, it's the same problem.
Yeah.
Learn from Apple.
So I've been down this rabbit hole recently trying to find a docking station for my computer that I just got. And I bought one and it showed up, it worked for a day and it stopped working. So I sent it back and they sent me a replacement and the replacement didn't work. So you can bet your butt I'm not going to go through the hassle of sending it back and trying to get a third one because it's just going to be the same problem. So I went and bought a whole nother unit and I just washed my hands of that money and I'm over it. It's the same kind of principle. You know, it's like you buy a product that's inferior, it doesn't work. That name brand that's associated to that product now is no longer a brand I'm willing to work with.
Yeah, well, and what's worse is you will then also tell your friends when I come to you and say, hey, you know, I need a dock for my Mac. How, you know, what can you recommend? You say, I don't know which one you want, but you don't want this one. I know that much.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, so I mean, so that's really the problem, right? I mean, they got your money, right? They got you, but to Chris's point, like you're not coming back, and you're also telling your friends, so you're keeping them from going in the first place. And so, I mean, it's, you know, incredibly important to have, you know, great, you know, user experience and customer experience. But the idea that I think Chris is trying to articulate is, you know, you got to plug the holes before you fill the water. Like, I mean, you know, the water doesn't do you any good. You just end up drowning if you know, if your bucket's full of holes.
Yeah. Apple Maps could be phenomenal. I will never check it out.
Maybe one day. So anyway, Chris, well, you know, like you mentioned, we're sort of at the top of the hour. Do you want to take a quick minute and just let people know where they can track you down online, engage with you if they want to have a conversation, or maybe look up Ferrotech, get online?
Sure. So I'm allowed to plug myself here, right? So
totally.
If you go to farotech.com, farotech.com, you can also email me at info@farotech.com. One of the things that we do that's very unique is that we sit down with our clients and we develop what's called a gap assessment. And a gap assessment is a 10-week deep dive. Look how thick this book is. This 10-week deep dive is our 3 to 5 year roadmap, so that when we work with clients, we know how to figure out every critical dial that we need to turn to make the next 3 to 5 years explosive for your business. Very few marketing companies are willing to take that level of discovery, you know, to get the results that we need. And so when I speak with people, the number one thing I want them to do is I want to give you as much information as possible to make an educated choice on what to do next. And so if you sit down with me for an hour, I'm not going to try to sell you. I'm just going to try to get you the information you need to decide for yourself. So anyhow, you can reach me at farotech.com. But I think the main thing I want people to know is that we're just not a heavy-handed sales company. We just love to talk to people that want to grow, that want to transform, that want to do really great things. So that's my plug. I appreciate the minute to.
No, that's awesome. Well, and I think it's a real value. I mean, obviously this programmatic advertising, I think is a hot item. I think it's a big part of the way we market in the future. And it seems to be the most on sort of the edge of what's new with technology versus a lot of other channels. I mean, people are sort of appending AI and things like that to older channels, but I think that this is the most natural progression of that technology. So I think it's really important, and I think it's awesome for our guests if they can get, or our listening audience if they can get in touch.
Yeah.
So,
well, I got to say, guys, I do a podcast. Maybe I do about 3 a week. You guys are the easiest people to talk to. I can tell you've done 300 interviews, because this was like, oh my gosh,
appreciate it.
An hour.
So. Yeah, no, time really flew by. And in fact, I've still got, I mean, I'm not even sure we actually hit our question list, which is,
I didn't even look at it, honestly.
Yeah. So I mean, it speaks to your podcast experience as well. You know, not everybody makes a great guest. So thanks for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate you.
Got it. My pleasure.
Absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.